This session covers a powerful function called the Vlookup function. The Vlookup function is really useful if you have a list of information and you have some key information in that list that you want to use to find a match for in another list in order to bring information back into your current worksheet. I'll be going through a few examples using the Vlookup function on this video. I'll be going through 3 examples of the Vlookup function in this video. For the first example, I'll be using the sample files that you can download. I'm on a worksheet called Evaluations. In this spreadsheet, we have a listing of 17 evaluations that maybe one of your customers has given you. You've asked them to rate you on an overall rating basis and on a facility rating basis. And when you ask them to rate you, you ask them to rate on a 4-letter score, so either A, a B, a C, or a D. Now the problem with a letter rating is it's really hard to do any kind of analysis on. You can't find the average, for example. So what I want to be able to do is to translate the rating that they gave me to a numbered score based upon this table over here. So for example, if they score me a B, in column C, I want to have a 4 show up. If they score me an A, in column C, I want to have a 5 show up, and so on. So to do this, we're going to use a function called Vlookup. Now the Vlookup is going to use this cell here, cell B5, as the lookup cell, or the lookup value. It's then going to come over to this table over here, which we refer to as the table array, and look in this table array for a match in the first column of the table array. So it'll look for a match, it'll find the letter B here. Now when it finds the match in this table array, it identifies the first column as being column number 1. So it'll find the match in column number 1, and then we want to bring back the contents of the second column in the table array. It doesn't use the column headers for reference purposes, it uses numbers. So it looks for this cell here as the lookup value. It'll come over here and find the match to this in the first column of the lookup of the table array. In this case, it'll find the letter B in the first column of the table array. We want to bring back the contents of the second column in the table array. So I'm going to be in cell C5 for this. We're going to use the Vlookup function. So starting a formula, equal sign, I'll go to the function button and look for Vlookup. There are several parts to this function. The first part is the lookup value. The lookup value is the information that you're going to use in the current list to find a match for in another list. The lookup value in this case will be cell B5. I want to find what letter B is in another table. I'll go to the table array. Now the table array is this area over here. I'm going to select the cells. Now when I select the cells, I'm not including the headings here. So I'm going to select G2 down to H5. Now I've got to make that range absolute. If I don't make this absolute, I can't copy it down, because if I copy it down to the next row, that table array will change to be G3 to H6, then G4 to H7, and so on. So I've got to make this absolute by touching F4 on my keyboard. So I'm going to look at this cell here, B5, come over to this table array, and in the first column of the table array, I'm going to find a match to, in this case, the letter B. And when I find that match, I want to bring back the contents of the second column of the table array. The match always takes place in the first column of the table array. I'll go to column index number. I'll type in a 2. Again, the match is in column number 1. I want to bring back the contents of column number 2. I'll go to a box called range lookup. I'll explain this in just a second. I'm going to put a 0 in here. If I don't put a 0 in here, what it will do, it'll look for a close match. If it doesn't find the letter B, it'll find the match in the table array that's closest to B. I don't want that to happen. I want to have an exact match. So I put in this box the number is 0 in here. I also could type in the word false if I chose to do so. So to recap, I'm looking in cell B5. That's for my lookup value. I'm going to find a match for that letter B over in the table array over here. I want to direct the contents of column number 2. And I'm looking for an exact match. When I click OK, I get a 4. The letter B translates to a 4. And when I copy this down, I get the results for all of them based upon the value in the mapping over here in the table array. For example, down here, I was scored a C, and I want to bring back the value of 3. I'm going to do the whole thing again. Same process though. The only difference is this time, I'm going to be looking at the facility rating as the lookup value and go over the table array again to bring back the numerical value. So again, in this case, I'll be looking at a D as my lookup value. I'll find the D in the first column of the lookup table array, and I'll bring back the contents of the second column. So I'm in E5, starting a formula, starting Vlookup, I want to use cell D5 as my lookup value. Again, the lookup value is the information that you're going to use in your current list to find a match for in another list. I'm going to click in table array. I'm going to use my mouse and select from G2 over to column H and then down to row 5. I'll make this absolute. This gives me the capacity to copy this down for all the other evaluations. I'll go to column index number. I want to bring back the second column of the table array as my result. I'll go to range lookup. I want an exact match. I'll put in a 0 and click OK. I bring back the answer of a 2. So the letter D translates to a 2. I'll copy this down for all the other evaluations in the list. That's our first example of doing a Vlookup function, which allows you to look up information from one list, find a match for that lookup information in another list, and bring back some information to your current list. For this second example of the Vlookup function, I've changed to a different file. You can also download this file. This file name is called Student Lookup. There are 2 sheets at the bottom. I'm going to be on the sheet called List. I will eventually be using the sheet called Student, though, as part of this demonstration. In this sheet called List, there's a listing of different student numbers, M1237200, and so on. What I want to be able to do is to bring back eventually the student's first name, their last name, and their program based upon the fact that I know their student number. So the first thing I want to do is bring back their first name. So the first student I want to look up is M1237200. Now the table array for this example is on a different worksheet. It's on a worksheet called Student. So if I come down here to the student worksheet, I can see on here their student numbers, their first name, their last name, and their program. What I'm asking the system to do in the first example is to look for M1237200. So it'll look in the first column of the table array and find M1237200. It always finds the match in the first column of the table array. I then want to bring back the contents of the second column of the table array, which in this case is the first name, Ernie. Now in our second example on here, I want to bring back the student's last name. So again, it'll find a match, M1237200 in column number 1. It'll bring back the contents of column number 3, the last name of the student. And then on our third example using this file, I want to use Vlookup again to find M1237200 and bring back the program name, which is going to be the 4th column in the table array. So we're going to be bringing back information on these students using the Vlookup function 3 separate times. So I'm going to go back to the sheet called List. I'll be in cell B5. That's where I want to put the student's first name. I'll start with an equal sign. I'll go to Vlookup and click. The lookup value again is the information that I want to use in the current list to find a match for in another list. In this case, that'll be A5. That's the first student's number. I'm going to go to Table Array and click. I'm going to go to a different worksheet called Student and click. I'm now in the student worksheet. Now in this case, rather than select individual cells like I did in the previous example, I'm going to choose the entire column. And the reason for doing this is if I add more students onto this listing here, I want those new students to be part of my calculation or my formula automatically. So this time, rather than choose individual cells, I'm going to go to column header A, get a black arrow, hold my mouse button down and drag all the way across to column D. I'm choosing all 4 columns in here. I'm going to go to column index number eventually, but before I do this, I want to remind you again, the match is going to take place in column number 1. I want to bring back the contents of column number 2, which is the student's first name. So I'll click on column index number. That bounces me back to the other worksheet. I'll type in a 2, bringing back the second column from the table array. I'll go to range lookup. I want to get an exact match. I'll type in a 0, and you can see here the response is going to be the word Ernie, which is the student's first name for student number M1237200. I'll click OK. I'll go to the bottom right corner of that cell. I'll get a black cross and double click. Now when I did this, I chose all the columns A, B, C, and D in the other worksheet. And the reason I did that was if I was doing this myself and not demonstrating this to you today, what I would probably do is I would take this formula here, I would copy it and paste it over to column C and make a few changes to it in order to get the last name to come back up. So that's the reason why I chose all 4 columns in the student worksheet so I could copy the formula. I'm not going to copy the formula though. I want to walk through the process again, showing you how you bring back information from the table array based upon the student number. So I'm going to be bringing back the last name this time. So again, starting a formula, starting Vlookup. The lookup value is the student number. The table array is in the other worksheet, so I'll click on table array. I go to the student sheet at the bottom. I'll choose all the columns Again, I could stop here on column C just because I just need the student number all the way through to the last name. I'm going to choose all of them though. I'll go to column index number, type in a 3, the third column in the lookup area. Arrange lookup as a 0 for an exact match. The answer will be Weaver, and I'll copy this down. And I get the last names of all the other people based upon their student number. And one more time, I'll be bringing back the program name, which is in the fourth column of the lookup area. So formula, Vlookup, the student number again. The table array is the worksheet called student. I'll select all the columns. I needed to do all the columns this time because the program went its way over here. I'll choose column index number, which will be a 4. The fourth column in the table array is where the program is. And arrange lookup is 0 for an exact match. The program for this student is a science program. And I'll click OK and copy this down for all the others. So this gives me just a nice way to link two different worksheets together by using the Vlookup function for it. For this third example, I'll be talking about how you can use the Vlookup function and connect two workbooks together. I'm working with a different file again this time. I have a file that you can also download called Vlookup across workbooks open. I also have open, though, the other file that we were using in the previous example. That other file was called Student Lookup, so they're both open at the same time. So I'm going to go back now to the one called Vlookup across workbooks. And in here, I've got the list of student numbers again. And what I want to do is bring back the first name of the student and the last name of the student based upon the student number. But this time, the information that I'm looking for is in a different workbook. So I've got to figure out some way to go back and forth between these workbooks to link these workbooks together. The first example we did, the table array was on the same sheet as the list we were working with. The second example, the one with the students, the table array was on a separate worksheet in the same workbook. In this example, we have one workbook where we want to bring information back from another workbook. So I'm in cell B2 in the file called Vlookup across workbooks. I also have the other file open called Student Lookup that has the information that I need to use in order to bring back the student name. So here's how you use the Vlookup function and bridge between two different workbooks. I'm in B2. I'll start a formula. I'll start Vlookup. The lookup value again is going to be the first student number, which in this case is A2. I'll click in Table Array. Now in the table array, I've got to go to the other workbook that's open. For this to happen initially, both books have to be open. The one where you want to have the results show up and the one that holds the information about the students. So I'm going to just go Alt and Tab to tab across to Student Lookup. And I'll go to the student worksheet. You see in here what it does. It picks up the name of the file, puts it inside of square brackets. It puts on the name of the worksheet, in this case called Students with an exclamation mark. I'm going to go to column header A, get a black arrow, and drag across to column C. I want to eventually pick up the student's first name and their last name. I'm going to go to column index number. The first name of the student, again, is in column number 2 of the lookup area, so I'll type in a 2. I want to get an exact match. I'll put in a 0, and you can see here it's going to bring from the other workbook the name Ernie as the result. I'll click OK, and Ernie comes back. I'll copy this down for all the other students in the list, and I'll get their name based upon their student number. I'm just going to try this one more time. I'm going to be in cell C2. I'm back in the file called Vlookup across workbooks. I want to link into the other file that's open called Student Lookup. So starting a formula, starting Vlookup. The lookup value again is the student number. The table array, I'll click there. It's in another file. So I'm going to hold Alt down on my keyboard and touch Tab until I see Student Lookup. I'll let go. I'm going to go to the student worksheet and click. I'm going to select the columns. So I'll go to column header A, get a black arrow, and drag across to column C. So I picked up again the name of the file. You can see part of it in square brackets. The name of the worksheet with an exclamation mark. I picked up column A through to column C. The last name of the student is in the third column of the table array. I'll click on column index number. I'll type in a 3. I'll go to arrange lookup, a 0 for an exact match. You can see it's going to be Weaver. And I click OK. Up here you can see using Vlookup, using A2 as the lookup value. In the other file, the worksheet, the columns I want to look at, and the third column. I'll copy this down to get all the last names for the students. So you can use Vlookup. You can have the table array in the same worksheet. You can have this table array in a separate worksheet in the same workbook. Or in this example, you can have the table array in a completely different workbook. Now, in order to do the linking, though, that file had to be open. Now, in the future, if I want to work in this file here, I don't have to open the other file up. It'll automatically link into the other file for me. So that's how you can do VLOOKUP function across workbooks.